Bill Wilson, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is going to be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So just before we hit record, you told me that your company name had recently changed, which we're going to talk about because not everybody wakes up and finds themselves having to change their name or deciding to change their name. Might be better wording for that. But let's just start off very brief. What does Pace Pricing do?
Right. So Pace Pricing is an agency that is designed to install good pricing practice inside B2B software as a service companies.
Okay.
It's an area of pricing. It's an area in B2B SaaS that's, a lot of founders are scared of and a lot of companies don't internalize well. And so I feel like much like UX and, you know, customer success teams that didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist 15 years ago, we're going to have pricing teams inside organizations from the very beginning. Right
Right.
now, it's sort of reserved for very few companies.
Okay. We'll talk about this because I want to better understand how you arrived at this focus. But let's just start off with something that people probably wouldn't have expected if I wouldn't have said it, which is that you just like literally underwent a name change because I was about to welcome you on the show with your previous name, which was Price to Profit. But today, let's just to be clear for everybody out there, it is Pace Pricing. So can you just walk us through kind of how that happened? Because you didn't just decide to change it. There was some influences going on.
Sure.
Just explain a bit of that backstory. And
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of embarrassing, I guess, actually. But in 2021, when I wanted to start the company, I went through this process of trying to find a name. And as many of your listeners can probably understand, it's a real pain trying to find a good name. And
mm-hmm.
you can get into some analysis paralysis if you're anything like me. Um, and so I ended up on Price to Profit, and I was pretty happy with it. Went back and forth with a bunch of my colleagues and advisors and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, maybe this is going to work. And I did some searching, of course, as you do, and didn't come up with anything. So I said, okay, this is great. This is going to match. I couldn't get the .com, of course. I think it pointed to a book or something, but I didn't feel like it was actually too off the mark. So I got the .co domain, and away we went. And so fast forward, it's 2023. It's July, I think. I had just sent an invoice to a client. 30 days had gone by, actually. I had sent the invoice, 30 days gone by. I checked in, invoice wasn't paid as you do. And they said, well, we sent you an email, about it. We need to change the address on the invoice or something. And I was like, I don't have any email from you. So we tracked it down, and they turned out they had sent it to a competing company, like another company that had almost the identical name to mine, who's run by, from what I can tell, a fantastic person who's been in the space for a very, very long time. And I, it was at that moment, I had become aware of the other company probably about 2 weeks earlier.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, it's only a problem if there's actually a problem, is sort
right.
of how I was thinking about it.
So
And
that
then
so they didn't. The other company didn't actually have the exact same name. It was just a similar name.
oh, it's
Pretty
pretty
much the
darn
exact
close.
same.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
what did you do? Just walk us through. Like, so when you discovered that there was
yeah.
this other company with a very similar, almost exact same name,
Mhm.
and there was obviously some a bit of confusion in the marketplace because your own customers were sending them emails to try and
Yep.
pay your bill. What did you do?
Well, the first thing I did was I wrote a letter to the company, the other company. And right before I hit send, I said to myself, is this the right thing to do? And so I sent an email to my lawyer, who hadn't been my lawyer yet, was my lawyer from my last two startups, my last two companies. And so I reached out to her and I said, hey, this has happened. I'm about to send a letter. What should I do? And she's like, do not send the letter.
Hmm.
She's like, do not
Why?
send the letter.
What did the letter
Uh,
say, and why did she say not to send it?
well, I think it's mostly about like drawing attention to it. If it's let's fix it before it becomes an actual problem.
Hmm.
You don't want to be trading on someone else's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that can happen if you are trading on someone else's name. I think they can, they have a lot of grounds. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know all the
Sure.
things,
And
but
this is
I
just,
know,
yeah, disclaimer. This is not legal
yeah,
advice,
it's
everybody,
not
not
legal
financial
advice.
advice, just two people having a conversation. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so I reached out to Laura, my lawyer, and she graciously advised me to, she's like, please change your name. It's the best thing for you to do is just change your name and don't make it so literal. And as you can guess, with Pace Pricing, it's still pretty literal. It's got price in the name. It's not, a made up kind of startup-y word with dropping some vowels,
Right.
that kind of thing. So it is still pretty on the nose, but yeah, so that was her advice. And then I went through this whole process again of trying to figure out a name. And, I won't go, I can go
Can
deep
you
into
just,
that, but,
yeah, take me back for a second though. So when you did update the name, did you end up reaching out to that other company and having any kind of communication with them, or you just kind of left it as is and move forward?
yeah, I mean, that was July and the name just got changed this week.
Okay.
So at the time of recording, we're late fall 2023, and it just got changed partly because I had to decide on a name.
Right.
And that took a long time. But yeah, no, I went through the process. I have not yet to date reached out to them. Not because I wouldn't be friendly or I'm scared or anything. I just, I
sure.
don't poke the bear.
Yeah. I mean, but you also, I think what's important to take away from this is that you were proactive. You didn't just leave it. You didn't just bury it. You also, it sounds like, did what is probably the right thing to do. If this other company was already established well before you with this name, right? So you just did what you need to do and moved on, right? Like you did.
Yeah.
Sounds like the right thing. So
yeah, exactly. I think it's the right thing, and I'm much happier with the name actually, and I'm much happier with everything's just lining up. It lines up with the program that I offer and my love of running. So it's it's one of those things. It's just serendipitous, I guess.
Yeah.
And so the big change is still yet ahead. Changing the website and all that kind of stuff. But
and for you, when you discovered this issue was it existed, what emotions did that trigger for you? Like, were you just been like, oh man, like, was it kind of chaos and fear? Like, did it feel like a real threat, or did you just look at it like, how did you deal with that when it came up?
Yeah, I mean, I felt it. I definitely felt it because I felt embarrassed that my client was reaching out to someone else, and then which immediately drew a thing in my mind was like, did they think I was that company all along? Do you know what I mean? Because you go through these sales processes sometimes.
Sure.
They may not understand. Maybe they went and looked on my website, but it wasn't actually my website. That kind of thing. Now, obviously, that's just I guess a silly thing. Not you shouldn't worry about that. But it happened again. So it actually happened another time with a client, and it was a fresh client, and it was just a few weeks later, and they had done the same thing. They're like, oh, we're on your website. And they sent me a thing with my website logo. I'm like, that's not my logo.
Right.
So yeah, so I felt pretty embarrassed, to be honest. And I felt a little bit like, and I felt a little scared. Yeah. I felt a little apprehension, I guess. It's like, cause the last thing I want to do is tread on anybody else's property. Sure. Like I just don't want to do that. Right. So, and I definitely don't want to be trading on someone else's name. So I bring it up.
Yeah, no, and I bring it up, Bill, because first of all, I appreciate you being so open about this. I think entrepreneurs, at all stages, we're always going to be running up against challenges, and very often something will happen, and in that moment, it feels like we're done. Like this is a big deal, but what I'm trying to point out is this is not your first rodeo, right? You're a seasoned entrepreneur. You've sold companies in the past before this, this consulting business for Pace Pricing, and you still had a feeling that you had to kind of work through, but you've worked through it. You took action on it, and then fast forward, here you are today, right? And you're off to the races. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Take me back to the focus of the company. So you specialize in pricing for B2B SaaS companies. So that's software as a service, in case people aren't familiar. You're not the only company doing that. There are other companies and other consultants in that space. Some, I think, there's probably maybe one or two larger ones that I've heard about or familiar with. And I'm wondering why. Why did you? I guess two questions here for you. First, why do you decide to pick this specific area of specialization? And then second, I'll just plant this one. We can come back to it, which is when I'm sure you've seen these larger companies in the space. As a seasoned entrepreneur, when you look at that, what does that tell you? How did you feel? Did you have any concerns about, well, I'm entering a space where there are other larger players, or maybe you just view it differently? So what are your thoughts on those two?
Right. So I'm sort of stuck on your second part of this question. What was take
Okay.
me back to your first part of your question again?
This is why yeah, I often think about this after I do this when I'll ask like two questions in one, and I think I'm like I'm committing a sin. I should not be asking. Always ask one question, Michael. So the first question is why get into the focus of B2B SaaS pricing?
Yeah, well, I kind of fell into it, and I think that's maybe a common refrain. So, if you'll indulge me for a minute or two, I'm going to just take you back to how all this started. So, I used to run an agency called Mindsea. It was a mobile app development design studio, and we had a productized service that we sold, and we had built a piece of software internally to allow us to present pricing for that productized service, and it looked an awful lot like a B2B SaaS pricing page. So it had 3 tiers, a couple of add-ons, that kind of thing. And we were selling these mobile app blueprints, which was sort of like the very beginning stages if you wanted to build a mobile app.
Right.
Some people would call it a discovery phase. We called it a blueprint.
Right.
And we sold to a lot of B2B SaaS companies at the time. So we built a lot of their companion apps. And every time I showed it to a B2B SaaS company, they would always ask me, where did you get this tool? And I said, oh, it's just something we built in-house. And, fast forward to a number of my entrepreneur friends who run SaaS companies and my head of sales and my CFO all pushing on me like, hey, let's go build a product with this thing and see what we can do. So in 2018, we founded a startup. We went and raised some money, and we built a product around this, targeting B2B SaaS sales teams. So we wanted to help them sell customized, deals, which often happen in sales-driven motions in SaaS. And so we went on our merry way. We went and we validated it in a silo, like a lot of people do. Right. We went into an echo chamber of other SaaS founders, and they were like, "Yeah, this is great." And then we went to try and sell it, and it was a little different. But I used to get on the phone a lot with revenue leaders at SaaS companies, whether it's like head of sales, director of sales, CRO, and one thing was really clear was that their pricing wasn't clear. And if your sales reps, like this is for anybody who's selling anything, if your sales reps do not understand your pricing, there's no way they're going to be able to communicate.
And when you say do not understand pricing, do you mean that there's just too many variations, or there's no clear logic? Like, just take us through when you say,
yeah, like it doesn't align to value, or they don't understand how it aligns to value, or it is too complicated. And I want to, say, I think complex pricing has its place. And so the most important thing about pricing is that you can sell it and it makes sense to your customer. So if that means there's a number of levers that have to be pulled, that's fine. But generally, if your sales reps have trouble articulating it to themselves or explaining it to someone else, even on their team, then they're really not going to be able to ever explain it very well to their customer. What will end up happening is they'll focus on one area of it that they do understand, and that's what they'll sell. So a lot of things will get left on the table. They won't get sold. They won't get cross-sold like they're supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. So that I heard over and over again. And then I started getting these conversations on my sales calls, which were, hey, you see a lot of this. What should we do with X? That kind of thing. So then all of a sudden I was becoming a bit of a consultant for free on my sales calls. And that just sort of led me to believe that, there's a really big space here for this. And when I dug even deeper, I realized that it's a really scary topic. And that sounds weird to say. And there's not too many things we're scared of in business. And I mean this in, it's a little tongue in cheek, I guess, but nothing can get our stomach in knots faster than messing with the relationship with our customers.
Right.
So if you got a customer, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you finish that last part, because I think I'm going to take us forward a little bit in the story, but finish that last part because it sounds important.
I've lost it. It's fine.
The customer, you're saying, yeah, thinking about I guess the relation between the customer and,
and
pricing.
Well, there's the relationship. Yeah. Like that fear that, being a little scared to mess with it. And there's no, greater sort of relationship with your customer than what they pay you. Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's where the rubber meets the road, and anybody who wants to mess with that, it's everybody's a little bit apprehensive of doing that.
Yeah. As we see this a lot, I mean, with working with consultants who know they can be earning more, but they're very afraid to adjust their pricing, right? Fear of losing clients or having people say no to their proposals or whatever it might be. Okay, so fast forward in the story, I want to get your thoughts on this one thing rather quickly, and then I want to take us deeper into, because there's a lot more that I want to cover here with you, and that is, so you decide to enter this market. You've been doing some consulting. You see that there's a need. You feel like you can make an impact, but you're not the only player. There's incumbents. There's probably larger, firms, consultancies doing something maybe similar. Does that register for you? How are you thinking about that, or do you just look at competition as a good, healthy thing? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I firmly believe a rising tide lifts all boats. I am in it for them as much as I am in it for the SaaS companies. I have made so many amazing connections with the rest of the pricing community as a result of me doing this, that I have never been in a group, except for maybe when I was into kite flying. We can talk about that another time.
That'll be the next podcast. Yep.
Yeah. That I've met that have been so welcoming.
Yeah.
And I think really
and that mindset that you're just sharing right now, right? Again, very classic example of an abundance mindset over a scarcity mindset. And I think it's always so refreshing and nice when I talk to people who have that abundance mindset, because when you actually see, and because this is a concern that all kinds of people have, in the consulting world, especially those that are earlier stage, they think they have the secret sauce and somehow they have to, like not really talk about what they're doing or be so careful. And it's like, no, there's way more opportunity than any one company can handle, or any hundreds of, there's just so much opportunity out there. So I'm glad to have you share that. Let's then kind of zoom forward to today. Can you give us a sense, Bill, of the size of the company? How many employees or team members? How many clients per year are you working with? Revenue? Just anything that you kind of share to give a sense of where you're at today.
Yeah, honestly, it's I kind of feel like we're in year one in a lot of ways. I spent the first probably 12 months, like 2021 when I registered the company, probably till late 2022. I spent mostly coaching SaaS companies. I've spent a lot of time. I've done over 800 coaching calls over the last year with SaaS Academy as a resident price coach there. And also I just love how closely pricing ties to product and all the other areas of the business. So it was really, really great. So I did that. But when I decided to double down on the pricing stuff, because I was already doing it, was really December of last year. So we'll probably crack 500K this year. So it's not a lot. And when I say we, I mean me. It's just me right now.
The we and me. Yeah, the we and me.
Yeah, yeah. It's just me right now. And I've got a great executive assistant out of Vancouver. And right now it's just the two of us. And I have a couple of contract, folks that I can work with right now. Sure. I am definitely in the middle of hiring. We are looking for a senior strategist to join the team because I have far too much work to do.
Right.
But yeah, so that's a little bit of a glimpse into the size. Still pretty early, but
yeah. Well, you're getting started with this one. Yeah. Obviously, you've built and sold other businesses in the past, so you're leveraging that experience. One thing that I noticed when I went to your website. Now I know the website has changed, or at least the name on the website has changed, but it did say that you have, I think it's $950 for some kind of an audit, or it's kind of like a discovery offer, the starting point. If that's still the case and still correct, why do you have the price on your website? What's the mindset behind that?
Well, for me, like publishing your pricing, I think is just in general good practice. If people can't understand the value of what you're trying to sell, then maybe there's a good opportunity where you have to do some education and bring them along. But a $950 offer is pretty straightforward. It's, here are the things you're going to get, and here you go. Here's how much it's going to cost. Right. It does a couple things. Filters out the people. Here's the deal with putting pricing on your website. Pricing does two things when you publish it. One, it attracts the clients you want and repels the ones you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So having your pricing out there, like if you offer a $50,000 consulting service, right, and you've got people knocking on your door, wasting your time, booking calls that only have a $3,000 budget, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Put a starting at price on your website at the very least. Project start at $25,000, right?
Right.
And that just is going to filter out a whole bunch of people you don't need to talk to. We don't need to win every client.
100%. Yeah, no, wise words there. so just to summarize what I'm hearing from this and what you said, I mean, I definitely agree with, if the complexity of the offer is pretty straightforward, right? So it's not complex. It's not that high ticket in the sense of, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, or even maybe tens of thousands of dollars. Having the price right plays a role. If somebody can't invest at that level, they're probably not going to be a good fit. But as you said, one other really important piece, which is, if your business is at the stage where you're just getting a lot of lead flow, a lot of opportunities coming your way, right? Time is really your most valuable asset. And so don't spend time getting on the call on calls or talking to people who don't have the ability to invest. So having a starting price of starts at 10K, starts at 25K, starts at 5K, whatever that might be on a monthly basis, or depending on the structure of your offer, will help to weed out the wrong people and make sure that you're, talking to the right kind of people. I imagine then, Bill, that you're not going to build your business to the level that you want, or even to the level it is today, just on the back of $1,000 pops, all day long. So somebody comes in, they pay $1,000. What happens next?
Well, I have that offer there really to service a very particular group. I love bootstrap B2B SaaS companies. And when they're early stage like that, sometimes they just have a pricing challenge they just want to talk through. Mm-hmm. So that is really there designed to help them. And it could morph into a larger pricing strategy engagement, but really it's about segmentation at that point for me. It's really about segmenting my audience. People who want large pricing strategy engagements where they know they have a challenge and they're, multi-million dollars a year, think 5 to 10 upwards to 50 or 100, they're not going to go and spend $950 on a 1 hour pricing audit. Mm-hmm. They're looking for something a little more holistic. They've got a lot of players involved, things like that. So that's how I think about it. It's just I want to speak to my audience, and I know I have them coming in and I really want to help. Like one of my core values in life is to help. So that's how I'm doing that.
And you're not just saying that now. I got to put this on the record, because you shared that exact same thought with me before we even hit the record button. So that it comes through very genuine. What percentage of people that come into your world right now, clients, start with that pricing audit, that $950 pricing audit?
A lot of them come in and it's they're either doing that or they're doing the other. It's not, there's not much crossover right now, and I'm glad for that.
Yeah, and we say doing the other. What is the other? Just explain what that other.
Yeah, sorry. Is. Yeah, I have the PACE program, PACE pricing system, I guess is what it's called. It's where we go through a multi-month process to tear down your pricing from the ground up, starting with data and building it back up. So it's profiling your company, your competition, and your market. Architecting packages and the model, and then calibrating prices. And then onto the execution phase where we validate it all, do impact analysis, and launch it. So it's a more holistic program, lots of people involved. I help them build a pricing team, and there's a lot of coaching. I love to coach, and I love to, and like I said at the beginning, my job is to install good pricing practice inside these businesses. And you asked, am I worried about some of the other consultants and other things? No, I do embrace it, because I believe my job is to teach them how to do it. I want them so they don't have to hire people like me to do their strategy. So what the companies that come to me for is the pricing strategy, right? That's the, Dan Martell says all the time, the chocolate and the broccoli, right? So that's the chocolate, right? That's what people really want. And the broccoli is they need to build good pricing practice. They need to build up the muscle to be able to look at pricing from the very beginning and through their product, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I want to teach them. Yeah. And so it's kind of a two-way thing. And I think that's a little unique in the market.
If we could drill into that a little bit more. So you're talking about the difference between what the market wants and what the market needs. And I think this is actually very common, across all industries and types of consulting, where oftentimes the consultant, right, or the founder, what they know the market or the buyer, right, that ideal client needs is actually what they lead with. So their messaging is about, let's just call it B, but the marketplace, the buyers of those services, are not thinking about B, they're thinking about A, right? Which is what they want, not necessarily what they need. In your experience, and even in terms of what you're doing now, is your messaging, is your content or your conversations, do they focus and do they lead with B, meaning what they need, or do you lead with A, which is what they want, even though that's not what you're going to deliver to them right away?
Absolutely. I lead with A. You have to meet them where they are. You have to use their words. their words, your message is how you have
Mhm.
to do it. So however they're thinking is what you need to come back to them with your message. And so for me, yeah, I lead with it's about pricing strategy. If you go to pacepricing.com right now, for example, that whole page is just about the pace pricing program. It hits them with their pains, the things that they're struggling with right now, and how they're going to get to the end of it. Very rarely do I talk about anything about installing good pricing practice, or, there's a bit of that,
Right.
but not a ton. It's really about how to get to the strategy that works.
Right. So the question that I know some people will have right now is, okay, that makes sense. But if you need to actually talk about what they need, which is the right kind of pricing practices, not just the strategy, when do you bring that up? When do you kind of say, hey, guess what? I know you wanted strategy and my website talks about strategy, but in fact, we need to start with practices, not strategy. When does that shift happen?
Yeah, I kind of teach by doing, I guess. We actually do a lot of the strategy work together. There's a lot of interactive workshops and things, and usually try and leave them with that idea that, at the end of each of these sessions is like, here's how you can now apply this in practice in your organization. I try and get a cross-functional team. We do a lot of in-person kind of mural style workshops where everybody's interacting. I don't know a lot about adult education, but I do know that the best way I learn is by doing it myself. And
Right.
so getting people to do those exercises and work through those things can kind of get that muscle moving. And yeah, so it's really about, the you're taking them through the thought process of doing the strategy. I may know where we're going to end up, but asking them the questions and letting them have the discussion
Sure.
is a big part of it. And then by the end of it, they're used to working through these types of problems, and then it's really about, okay, next steps. You got to build a pricing team, and here's how often you meet and things like that. So yeah, I sort of weave it through the whole program.
Yeah.
It's never sort of aha, I've tricked you. Welcome to me teaching you how to build your own strategy. No, it's not
Right.
that. It's mostly I try and weave it through.
And so the first audit, that one service, right, 950 for that currently.
Mhm.
What is the system, kind of the full on strategy? What does that type of work look like from a pricing perspective? Like, what do you charge for that?
Yeah, it starts around 50K US and then goes up from there depending on how involved we have to get in there's certain things that take quite a bit of effort and time
Right.
that we need to account for, like if we're doing a lot of surveys or really really large market surveys with panels that cost a lot of money, that can really drive the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about you know I would say I did one recently for about 75. So that's so far roughly the top end that I've been doing. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned also that you're doing hiring, or that you are hiring right now. What's the desire? How do you think right now about the future and scaling this business? Is it going to be
Mhm.
through a lot of people, or like what do you envision if we fast forward, 2-3 years from now? What do you think the business will look like?
Yeah. Well, I'm a technologist. I came up as a software developer and I've founded technical companies, my entire life. So I want this to be a tech enabled, agency. I love the idea of being able to make your own way. I went down the VC route before. It's an interesting journey. I salute anyone who can actually do it well. But I kind of like the idea of building a really profitable, good business. And I love people. I love teams and I love to lead. So I definitely, it's going to be people powered, but it's going to be very systematized. One of my other core values is clarity, largely because I suffer from it myself, but I really want to get clear on everything. And that means having good systems and processes. So systems, processes, technology, and people. I've got a structure that I know will scale, I think, just based on the pods of people that can deliver these types of projects.
Right.
And I've done some calculations of where I want to be. And, I want to grow it I kind of want to get it as big as I can, which is not something I've ever really done before. When I ran my first agency, I was very much the gatekeeper and it was very much sort of focused on, it was very much lifestyle-y. And after
Yeah.
10, 12 years, it was still only like $2.5 to $3 million in revenue. But this time I'm focused on how do we really scale it?
And when you say scale, when you say, yeah, kind of get it to that next level, or take it much, much bigger, one thing that a lot of people are concerned by is, especially when you're starting off, you're doing all the delivery, you're making sure that there's real excellence in the outputs and real outcomes being created. How are you, or what have you done with the systems or the product, so that for you to get to the point where you feel comfortable hiring and bringing in other people to be part of that delivery and maybe remove you from it?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in build the plane while you fly it. So there's a little bit of that, but I also really believe in productized services. So I started out right from the very beginning in my head knowing that I was going to be selling a program, and so for the first few projects at the beginning, we're very much figuring that out. What is that going to look like? So yeah, so now I have that pace, pricing system is what we're going to sell, right? So
and
it's
when you talk about, sorry, just
I was going to say it's going to be pretty easy to train people on it.
Right. Yeah. Got you. Okay. And then just to put a bit of a spotlight on maybe the differences between what a more custom solution might look like and what a productized solution would look like. What I'm hearing you say is you've essentially documented, here's what our process looks like. Here's the system. Here's all the different components of it. Here's what we do at each stage, from the audit to the surveys, to the review sessions, to the workshops. So all that will be very clearly documented, so that if you aren't the one doing it, you can easily, or with time, train somebody up to take over that, and they can deliver it, because really what they're doing is they're following the quote unquote kind of an instruction manual of how to deliver the services at the level of quality that you're after. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think it's important to make that distinction. It's how we deliver the service, not doesn't replace anyone's, intellect and how we can actually execute on the actual strategy. But yes, how we deliver and how we over deliver for our customers is really what I want to, turn into the processes.
What about that second part then? I mean, or what you mentioned, which is, so there's the how, but there's also kind of the strategic mindset, or bringing more of that critical thinking to it. That's something that I think a lot of founders struggle with when they're thinking about, bringing on more, either whether more senior people or just others that can actually help them to do more of that strategy level work. And as a result, they're often tied into it because they don't feel like they can bring somebody in who has that. How do you think about that in terms of tapping and finding the kind of person that has that ability or experience to, really apply critical thinking and be more strategic, and not just, again, follow like the instruction manual?
Yeah, I guess the big thing for me is the battle between sometimes, like, I feel like I don't know. Like I struggle from that, imposter syndrome sometimes, like I think we all do. And I'm just like, is this the right thing? And what breaks me out of that is talking to people that are much smarter than me, people that are really, really good at this stuff. And I don't shy away from it. If I can get in a room full of smarter people, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how I hire. I try and find people that are better than me, that have sharper minds than me on this stuff, and learn from them and bring them on, and, try and download the vision and mission. And if I can do that, so if they've got the skills and they have that mindset and they get the vision and mission, we're almost done, right? Like if you can get that far, like if you can download the vision and mission and they believe it and they're really good executors, like I've worked with so many people like that over the years, and I know that that's the core of a good team. And so that's what I look for. I look for people that, it sounds a little bit glib, I guess, but it's like, I want to find people that are better than me at this and bring them along.
Now, some people might wonder, that sounds like a great kind of person to find, or several people to find, but doesn't sound cheap. So how do you think about the compensation for that level of person, that you're looking to bring on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm struggling with this right now. Went to market, got some great resumes, and then had quite a bit of sticker shock when I looked at it. But I remember this same feeling when I started my first company. I hired my first employee. I had some contractors that were kind of full-time, which was easier. Sure. But I had to hire this first full-time employee. They didn't want to go contractor. They felt it was more secure. And I was like, this is way less secure, just by the way. And I was really scared to bring them on. And but once I did, I felt a little better, right? And everything was great. Then I had to bring on my second one. And then I realized, I said, well, if I can't make payroll for this group, then I'm screwed. I've got nothing. I can't cover it with my credit line. I can't cover it, with my personal stuff, which was always kind of my backup. And that's kind of when all the stress went away, because once you let go of that, like once you have to trust the machine that you've built to generate the revenue or the leads, the opportunities, the pipeline, once you start trusting in that, everything else will follow. So for me, the big fear is like, is this investment worth it? Do I have the pipeline to support this person? And the answer is not today, but if I have this person, I'll have it tomorrow, because that's one, it's a forcing function, and two, it's going to immediately free me up to go off, and now I've got another person that I need to provide for. And
I think
that's a driver
it says a lot about the kind of person that you are, because some people would probably be the opposite, meaning that when they add that level of what some may consider to be risk, right? In your case, probably likely in my case as well, it's like, okay, well, now we have to make this work. Whereas others would be paralyzed by the fear of, like, if I don't make this work, X, Y, Z, Z, right, is going to go wrong. And now they actually hold themselves back from taking any action. It's almost debilitating. So I think, right, no necessarily right or wrong here, right? You do what feels right for you as an individual person. I'm talking to everybody kind of joining us, but just interesting to see that there are different ways to view those kind of situations. But many people do talk about that idea of, burning the boats behind you, and it's like you have to get it done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like just to add to that, because I struggle with that. Right. I go back, I still struggle. So I want everybody listening to know, like, it's not a magic thing, but like, forcing yourself into that mindset is the key. Nothing, like, the struggle is the reason, you know what I mean? Like, you can't grow into the pain, right? Like, right. I've actually found myself recently almost resisting deals because I know how underwater I am. Right. And so, like, that's a signal, right? That's a signal to me that you're stalling. Bill, you're stalling. Execute. Go get the person. Hire the person. Right. I've got a coach, right? And, I think everybody should have a coach, to be honest. And I have a coach, and he, challenged me. He's like, okay, cool. You said you need this person. You've already got feelers out for that. That sounds good. But really, the stretch here is that you need this person. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I can't really afford it, blah, 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 all the same excuses, right? You work through it, and then you realize you've got to do it, and then you pull the trigger and you do it. But it's still, I just wanted to just share, like, I don't know, it is one of those things that you do struggle with, but it is nothing, I don't know how to say this, but yeah, it's the struggle that matters.
So Bill, before we wrap up, you're the pricing guy, or at least, the B2B SaaS pricing guy. That's where you're focused today. What is one pricing mistake that you feel consultancies, consulting firms, consultants are making that they may not even know that they're making? Just anything kind of stand out for you as, like, this is a really big one, or this is an important one to deal with?
Yeah. A long time ago, I mean, I think especially early consultants starting out, they tend to not know what they're worth, and therefore they will discount themselves before their customer even asks for a discount. So I feel like those kinds of motions are not great. So I think it's this. There's a couple of things. One is that someone once told me double is nothing, right? And I think we all probably know this in consulting, but generally, if you're going to charge by the hour, which I don't recommend, but if you are going to charge by the hour, doubling what you think you make, even as a solo, and saying, yeah, that's your rate, is you're just selling yourself short. You can't scale that way. You can't continue to run a business that way. So I always just say a third, if you're going to do hourly at the very least. And when you
say a third, just break that up for us. Explain.
So a third for you, like a third for the employee or the person, a third for the business, and a third for expenses, operations, things like that. So taxes and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of how I think about it. So double is nothing. So if somebody says, yeah, I just need to make, I don't know, it's like $100 an hour, I want to make 200 grand a year. It's roughly $100 an hour if I'm full time. So I'm going to charge $200 an hour. You are not going to get there. You're just not. One, you're not going to work that many hours because you're going to be out hunting and, all that kind of stuff. Right. So that's one. And the other one is, it's just having literally, when I started Mindseat, I had this thing in my head: know what you're worth and charge it, and do not apologize for how much you cost.
Yeah.
Right. If someone comes to me and wants to do coaching with me today, and this will probably seem low to some people, but right now it seems the right mark for me. But I do price coaching as sort of my middle like my middle offer, a couple sessions a month, 6-month commitment. It's 2,000 US a month, and they get 2 60-minute sessions with me a month. That's it. And so it's about leverage, right? It's about, how can you leverage your time, know what you're worth and charge it. I know in that hour, I can give someone a ton of value, probably 10x $1,000. So, I think that's how to think about it.
So for the B2B SaaS founders out there, reach out to Bill. Why don't we wrap up then here, Bill? I want to thank you so much for coming on. I also want to make sure that people can learn more about you and the work that you're doing with Pace Pricing. URL, give me the domain. I don't want to make any assumptions on this.
So yeah, it's pacepricing.com. So
there we go.
PACE pricing.com. And you can get me on LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty much WDR Wilson everywhere. That's just a name, my initials, and it just seems to follow me everywhere I go, and nobody seems to have it. And you can, any service you come across, if you type WDR Wilson in, you'll probably find me.
There we go. All right. Well, we will link all that up in the show notes. Bill, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. It's been a blast.